The man who tried to cross a bridge with two companions in Lüneburg, Lower Saxony, on the 21st of May 1945 at 7 o'clock in the evening escaped like a rat. He was short and skinny, with a shaven head, a face without a shadow of a moustache, and a black patch covering one eye. At first glance, he looked like just another soldier who, now in civilian clothes, was trying to return home after the war. The two Soviet soldiers, former prisoners of war who were manning the bridge, saw them coming and almost as a matter of course asked them for documents. The man with the patch reached into a pocket and produced a brand new identity card identifying him as Henrich Himmler, a sergeant in the Geheime Feldpolizei, the German army's secret police. When he handed it over, his hands were shaking. Also, something in the demeanor and manner of the guy with the eye patch did not fit that of a rough sergeant. The Soviets decided to hold the three men and hand them over to a British army patrol to take them to an interrogation center. They had been told that many Nazi hierarchs were trying to escape from the Allies, disguised as civilians or soldiers using false documents. It fell to Captain Thomas Sylvester to interrogate him, who began asking him the routine questions: where he had served, where he had come from, and where he was going, to which the man in the patch answered correctly. Someone else might have been let go, but Sylvester was struck by the manners and manner of speech of the detainee, who, according to the papers, was an undercover policeman. That made him press harder with the questions. As the interrogation progressed, the suspect's answers became more confused and sometimes contradictory until he was suddenly transfigured. The British captain would always remember what followed as a grand theatrical scene. Without warning, the man removed his eye patch, revealing a fully healthy eye, then pulled out a pair of round spectacles from one of his pockets and put them on. Only then, after a defiant silence, did he say to him in an authoritative martial tone, as if he were giving him an order he had to carry out: "This is Henrich Himmler, and I want to speak to General Eisenhower or Marshal Montgomery." Sylvester's mouth dropped open. Adolf Hitler and Joseph Goebbels dead. Himmler, the ultimate architect of the Holocaust, was the Nazi most wanted by the Allies, and he had just fallen into their hands. As soon as he recovered, he knew he was in over his head. He left the interrogation room and ran to tell his superiors. Himmler waited. He believed he still had cards to play, not only to save his life, but to become a useful piece in the victor's chess game. In the last days of the Reich, Hitler's once all-powerful lieutenant had lost all his prerogatives and even carried a death sentence handed down by the Führer himself. By early 1945, Himmler had realized that the war was lost. He did not share the delirious optimism of his chief and some of his assistants. In January, he ordered a partial halt to the mass extermination of the Jews and even began negotiations with representatives of various international organizations offering to buy tens of thousands of Hungarian Jews. Of course, none of this was reported to Hitler. He also tried to negotiate peace with the Allies behind the Führer's back. He sought contacts through Sweden and Norway, but to no avail. Neither Germany nor Himmler had anything to negotiate. All he got was that, on the 28th of April, the Swedish diplomat Folke Bernadette informed Hitler that Himmler was negotiating behind his back with the Allies. The Führer's reaction was furious. "This is the most shameful betrayal in the history of mankind," he burst out. A betrayal he could not let pass. He immediately stripped him of all his offices and condemned him to death. The order was to shoot him where they found him. As he still had a few loyalists inside the Berlin bunker, someone informed him that Hitler had ordered him killed, and he went underground. He was thinking of fleeing when he learned on the 30th of April that the Führer had committed suicide. Himmler knew that the end of the war was imminent. Germany had already lost. As he sought to maintain his power, to remain influential, he wanted to agree terms with the Allies. Before killing himself, Hitler had appointed Admiral Karl Dönitz as his successor, with the order to continue the war and resist to the end. This was an impossible order to carry out, with the Red Army in the streets of Berlin and the Allied encirclement suffocating German troops wherever they still held out. The only thing Dönitz could try to do was to buy time by negotiating with the Allies to save as many German soldiers and civilians as possible from falling into the hands of the communist enemy. One of his proposals sounded delusional: surrender to the Western Allies, that is Britain, the United States and France, but be allowed to continue fighting the Russians in order to prevent the communist advance into Europe. Himmler wanted to play one more card. He contacted Dönitz and asked him to leave him in charge of the negotiations. The Admiral's answer was a resounding no. With all the doors closed, he had no alternative but to flee. He dressed in civilian clothes, bandaged one eye, covered it with an eye patch, and walked for 2 weeks through northern Germany, together with his assistants Macker and Grothmann. In one of his pockets, he carried a document identifying him as Henrich Himmler, a sergeant in the secret police whom Himmler himself had shot for defeatism. If that way out did not work, he still had another, a cyanide pill hidden in his mouth. Captain Sylvester's order was to take the prisoner to a confiscated house where the headquarters of the British Second Army had been based. When Himmler heard of this, he thought that his wish to talk and negotiate with General Bernard Montgomery, head of the British troops, was about to be fulfilled. He had much information to offer, but in return he wanted not only to save his life and offer his services to the Allies, but also to obtain the release of his wife, Marga, and daughter, Gudrun, captured 3 weeks earlier by the Allies as they attempted to flee Bavaria in SS custody. His illusion of coming face-to-face with Montgomery vanished on the morning of the 23rd of May, as soon as he entered British headquarters. Instead of the general, he was met by Intelligence Colonel Michael Murphy, with precise orders to interrogate him thoroughly without offering him anything in return. At first, Himmler tried to assert his importance and again made his demands. But if this was intended to impress Murphy, it had the opposite effect. Besides interrogating him to the point of exhaustion, the colonel humiliated and beat him. He would show him pictures of prisoners released from concentration camps and beat him again. When he tired of doing so, he would order his staff to replace him in the task. He made it clear to him that he would never talk to Montgomery, let alone General Eisenhower. If he wanted to give information, he would have to give it to him. Murphy also told him that if he didn't talk now, he would surely talk tomorrow, that it was only a matter of time. Himmler with Hitler. In addition to being the architect of the Holocaust, he created the Nazi death squads, a despicable being, all the holes. The colonel was about to order Himmler to be taken to a cell for further interrogation the next day, when he realized that, from the moment of arrest, no one had checked the prisoner. This was a serious offense indeed, for Nazi leaders seemed to have a bad habit of committing suicide in order not to be held accountable for their crimes. Hitler had shot himself in the Berlin bunker. Goebbels had also killed himself, but not before wiping out his entire family. To right the wrong, he called in medical captain Jimmy Wells and ordered him, "Check all his holes. Himmler's hole by Himmler's hole." Captain Wells did as he was told. He saved the mouth for last. "Please open your mouth," he asked. Himmler refused, turning his face away. Then it all came to a head. Murphy gestured for his men to grab the Nazi and pull him down so that the doctor could open his mouth. When Wells saw a blue capsule and tried to stick 2 fingers in to pull it out, all he could get out was his own bloody hand as the Nazi bit it off. There was no time for more. As the doctor screamed in pain with his mouth free, Henrich Himmler bit down on the cyanide tablet. It took him only seconds to die. On the 23rd of May, 1945, he bit into a cyanide tablet when he realized that he had no choice but to die. It took him 15 seconds to leave this world. The Lost Diaries. Heinrich Himmler's war crimes and crimes against humanity as a planner and executor of the Holocaust have been extensively documented, but it took almost 70 years after his death for some aspects of his innermost thoughts to become known. It was not until 2013 that the existence of his personal diaries, found and forgotten by the Soviets, came to light. They were rediscovered in 2013, classified as Dnevnik, diary, in a Russian military archive in Podolsk, an industrial city south of Moscow. Himmler's official diaries, some 1,000 pages long, were typed by the Nazi leader's aides in the years 1937 to 1938 and 1944 to 1945. In their pages can be found a sinister combination of banal, everyday comments and accounts of execution orders. He tells, for example, how, after having a relaxing massage, he decided to have 10 Polish political prisoners shot. One also finds reflections like this: "We can talk about it openly among ourselves, but we will never talk about it in public. I am talking about the evacuation of Jews, the extinction of the Jewish people." These texts were analyzed and researched by the German historian Matthias Uhl, who described their author as follows: "Himmler was a monster of contradictions. On the one hand, he was a ruthless executioner who pronounced death sentences and planned the Holocaust. On the other hand, he was a meticulous caretaker for the SS elite, for his family, friends and acquaintances. This was a new episode of eternity. And you, what do you think about Himmler? Tell us in our comments box. If you liked this video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Also remember to give us a like and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next videos. Also, if you liked it, don't forget to share it on your social networks. See you next time.